much. Councillor Louise Brown, this is the first time in my history that we have an online petition.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The petition is to stop Mountain House School closure, and I'm entitled to read the prayer of the petition and the number of signatures. Staff at Mountains started this petition to Monmouthshire Council. Mountain House is Monmouthshire's only state-run special school and is facing the threat of closure. Mountain House Chepstow are a restorative, holistic and dyslexia-friendly school for boys with social, emotional and behavioural difficulties, offering day and residential placements. Our highly trained, dedicated and caring staff are committed to providing every young person in our care with the opportunity to reach their full potential through individualised bespoke packages. We have a strong record of success with our young people moving on to further education, employment and training. The County Council have announced a proposal to close the school. If the proposals are successful, the school could close by December 31st. This school has changed the lives of pupils and enabled them to turn their lives around. Please help us save this school for the benefit of the lives of future generations. It's been signed by 2,333 people to date, and I would like this to be formally accepted as part of the consultation process, and I believe referred to Cabinet on the 5th of June, because in the Constitution that's what's allowed. I think it's on D14 of the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. I'll make sure that your agenda is minuted in the minutes of today's meeting, so you have a record.
Yes, Chairman, could I just add if anybody wants to look at the consultation and the supportive comments, it's at change.org, Stop Mountain House School Closure. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is notices of motion. The only one we have this afternoon is from County Councillor Batroni.
That's unusual, Chair. Chairman, I felt compelled to bring this motion forward, given the recent results published on Stats Wales around the performance of actually all our children at GCSE level, but particularly our free school meal pupils. Our attainment free school meals, so that's pupils getting grades A star to C at 17.9%, which is the worst achievement in Wales. We are the worst in the country for free school meal pupil children. And we also have, again, the worst attainment gap in Wales. I think it's the fourth or fifth year in a row we have the worst attainment gap. That is a gap between pupils on not in receipt of free school meals and those who are. In short, Chairman, this is nothing short of a disgrace, particularly when you consider I've raised this issue, this has got to be the fourth or fifth year, I've lost track because I've raised it that often. And to be fair to the administration, they made it a priority when I first raised it. It's on our strategic plan to improve. And despite that, and despite it being a priority, and I dread to think what it would be if it wasn't a priority, we have become the worst in Wales. It's just not acceptable in Monmouthshire to be in this position, letting down our poorest children. And so you look at the statistics, and I have, across Wales, and you try to look at councils that are similar to us in demographic terms. So let's take the Vale, another Conservative controlled council. And the data tells us there that they also have a terrible attainment gap, the second highest in Wales. So the worst attainment gaps for poorer pupils doing well in the GCSEs, by coincidence, are controlled by the Welsh Conservatives. We can definitely conclude they have a chilling effect on social mobility in Wales, and or God forbid, if they ever entered power in Welsh government, what would happen to children across Wales. But to be fair to the Vale, They outperformed us on non-free school meals by 10%. They outperformed us on pupils in receipt of free school meals by 15%. The achievement was higher. And ours was worse than them on both instances. And they have similar demographics, so I'm sure we'll hear all the excuses trumped out or rolled out every year, the same old stuff. But there's undeniably now a trend. The cohort size is the other excuse given by cabinet members. Last year, the cabinet member said, when the results were terrible, this gap is due to exceptional outcomes, and I'm quoting, for non-free school meals children and volatility in Monmouthshire's small number of students from deprived backgrounds. So I checked the cohort size and just to see where Monmouthshire was. So Anglesey has a smaller cohort size than Monmouthshire, and so does Ceredigion. I've just picked two. Ceredigion quite much lower than us. Anglesey outperformed us by 10%, and Ceredigion, who has the smallest cohort size of free school meal pupils in Wales, outperformed us by 15%. So we'll hear the cohort size, we've got a small cohort size, but councils have smaller cohort sizes, and they outperform us by a distance. And it can't be the case that we're in the 4th or 5th year now of these awful results on our poorest children in Monmouthshire, and hear the same old excuses, tired, forlorn excuses. Oh, we've got a plan, it's our priority, we'll look at EAS. We're getting worse. The trend is undeniable. If you look at this as on a comparative scale, the trend is a dip. There's an underlying issue here in Monmouthshire that cannot be ignored. And so we have to have an honest conversation about it without reverting to the demographics. I've just proven that point wrong. The cohort size, which is complete nonsense if you compare it to other councils are very similar to us. And then I read the cabinet member's response to me raising it in the press, and that accusing me personally of failing to recognise free school meal pupils and the range of complex challenges they face. I was pretty shocked by that, given that my sister could not speak properly, could not write properly, was in the Monmouthshire education system and had was vulnerable and had many challenges. And then to say that I don't have an understanding of this is quite infuriating, but okay, fine, I don't understand it. But this also implicitly suggests that Monmouthshire is somehow unique in Wales for having children with lots of complex needs, with children who have faced really difficult backgrounds, which is obviously not the case. Monmouthshire is not unique in that regard. There are many other councils, if not all councils, who face and deal with children in similar backgrounds, except they do better than us when dealing with these children. We are the worst, not undeniably, the worst. And so we have to question some of the decisions that are being made here. And for the first time ever, I agree with Councillor Louise Brown on something, and probably the last time, but on Mountain House. How we could even conceive of closing an institution that deals with many of the children we are talking about. It is an institution, an organisation, it's a building. It's an institution that helps one of the most vulnerable pupils in Monmouthshire, but the Tories want to close it. They want to shut it to deal with the children that we're talking about. And so they talk about the Welsh Government. Here, they're closing one of the best places to educate the children that face the toughest backgrounds. And the Labour group just visited it and seen the amazing work they do there. The staff are tremendous. And they deal with children with so much complex needs. It just blows your mind how the staff do such a great job. They get no support from the Conservatives at all. So we have to have an honest conversation, not only with this administration that let down the poorest students year after year, as well as their contemporaries in Vale, to be fair. There's a blend of Welsh conservatism here. A chilling effect, I would call it, on social mobility. But also EAS. I've spoken to quite a few officers of EAS, and I've been reassured many a time. We have this tracking system. We can track all the pupils and their progress. But every year when these results have come out, the same conversation happens where they say, well, it was a last-minute shock. Well, we have this fancy tracking system that should tell us if we have any issues. And every year it's a shock. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is going on with EAS? And they should come to council, given we are the worst in Wales, and explain, as well as the administration, why we're in this terrible situation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are you seconding the motion?
I'm second. I'd like to speak, please.
Okay, carry on.
Yeah. I fully agree with Dimitri. He's obviously gone through that in full detail. If you live in Monmouthshire and you come from a reasonably well-heeled, sort of affluent background, aspirational background, yes, you've got a fairly good chance of doing well. But for children at that other end, who are on free school meals, who are obviously coming from a family of low income, then they are the ones that lose out. Now, if other authorities have strategies developed to actually help those youngsters, then we should also have strategies that are equally effective. And really what's happening is that they are being left behind. If you look at the free school meals, if you look at the looked after children outcomes, they're way behind other authorities. And that is not right in terms of those youngsters. The only way that you're going to get out of a relatively low income background is through education. You're not going to be left thousands or millions of pounds of money. You have got to work your way out. And if you don't do well in school, then that chance is limited to you. And I think we're not really doing anything to help that. We must, as Dimitri said, we must hold EAS to account. They are paid substantial amounts of money to support schools and also to support these youngsters. And if they're not doing that, then we should perhaps change our provider. But at least we need to ask that question and not just flag it in red on some system of recording it. It's okay recording a danger, but unless you do something about it, it's positively worthless. And I'm sure EAS come down on schools if they don't record things about the attainment of their pupils. So I really think we want to have EAS here to actually hold them to account. They are there to actually assist schools to develop strategies to help those youngsters. I'd also agree with Dimitri and Councillor Louise Brown on Mountain House. I've been there twice, and to close that school is going to be a travesty. And to bus those youngsters who've got quite particular difficulties, to bus them to Penarth, possibly an hour and a half or a 2-hour journey, is going to be absolute hell for them and for the driver and for the escort. There were children in tears at the consultation because they don't want to move school. Those children have got very challenging conditions. And Mountain House has worked hard. I think we need to change it and to widen the age, make it into provision for girls and boys. But if we're going to close that, we will be one of the few authorities in Wales that does not have provision for special needs children with that particular condition. And it's not going away. And to be fair, I think it's not going to be doing favours to people who are in maintained comprehensives, who are going to have more challenging candidates, pupils in their classes. It's not a good place to be. So I really hope that this administration rethinks that and actually goes down there. And before Cabinet make that decision,
Mr. Chairman,
I would say they should go down to see
Sue
it.
Thomas is talking about Mountain House. It's not the motion here. That is a statutory consultation which is underway, and this House, this chamber will debate that in due course when the consultation finishes on the 29th of August of April, prior to it coming back to Cabinet and ultimately to Council.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Joe Watkins, please.
Thank you. I was very unhappy to read Dimitri's motion, not in terms of him bringing it forward, but that we're actually having to have this conversation and discover how poorly our free school meals pupils are doing. So I would actually like to call this council and the officers who work for this council to work with those authorities which are doing better than we are. If Anglesey is doing better than we are, if Ceredigion is better than we are, if the Vale is doing better than we are, we need to learn from those councils. It is often said it is much, much harder to be poor in a wealthy area. It is much tougher on our free school meal pupils because we don't have the large cohort size to get the extra resources in place. So we have to think smarter. We have to work harder to do the best for these pupils. So what I really want to do is call on this council to actually work with people who figured it out so that we can actually do the best for Monmouthshire's pupils.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richard John.
So first of all, in the interests of proper scrutiny of the executive, holding the authority to account and shining a light on figures which rightly concern all of us in this chamber, can I firstly thank Niall Griffiths of the South Wales Argus for bringing these figures to the attention of the Labour group in his article last week. I did think it was a coincidence that this motion appeared just days
Chairman,
after
that's
that
inaccurate.
article
I had
on
called
figures.
the press. It was my data.
So this motion came out just days after the article was published. On figures, these exam results came out in August 2018, and it's now mid-April. So I do wonder where the Labour group has been during
Chairman,
this time.
I've asked... No, Chairman, a point of order. He said, where's the Labour group been? I have an email where he's accusing me of something, and I've point of clarification then. Point of clarification, I've been emailing Will for the data for last month. A month.
Richard, carry on.
Okay, if I can make my contribution without having a to and fro debate. So after this story appeared in the South Wales Argus, some figures from Councillor Petruni, perhaps that was your own research, I don't know, the figures were sent on to Martin Shipton at the Western Mail, again with a quote saying that children are nearly 50% less likely to get good GSCEs compared to their better off counterparts. It goes on to criticise GSCE performance of children on free school meals. He provided an attachment, a spreadsheet of figures, and I know you pointed out some comparative local authorities who have similar figures to us, which is not a surprise given they're similar authorities. But you've sent him this attachment about percentage of children who got good GSCEs, and your motion also talks about GSCEs. I don't know how many GSCEs the Labour group have got, but given they don't exist, I'm guessing not very many. We must recognise that the percentage of Monmouthshire pupils eligible for free school meals, securing at least 5 A-star to C grades, including English and Maths, is not high enough. That's the level 2 inclusive. The gap in the level 2 inclusive between free school meals and non-free school meals is too wide. I've said that repeatedly in this chamber, and it remains a key priority for this authority. It's too wide in part because our non-free school meals pupils achieve some of the highest outcomes in Wales, but nevertheless, that gap remains too wide. Last year, 14 pupils eligible for free school meals achieved that level 2+. A further 23 achieved the level 2, that's 5 A-star to C grades, but not necessarily including English and Maths. And 61 achieved the level 1, so that's 5 GCSEs. Within this cohort that's identified, 36 have an identified additional learning need, 27 had a standardised assessment score for reading of less than 85, that's below the average range. 7 of the cohort were looked after children. 12 of the cohort at Mountain House Special School were pupils with statements and high levels of need, which were not anticipated to achieve the level 2+. Now, many of these pupils have really complex needs and very challenging home environments, which makes their individual achievements, which may not be recognised by the level 2+, even more apparent. So what are we doing to support vulnerable pupils? Well, we are working closely with the EAS, and actually, unlike the Labour Party, I believe that we achieve better when we work closely with our partners in other local authorities. So we will continue to work really closely with our partners in the EAS. Indeed, last week we approved the new EAS business plan for the next year, and attainment of vulnerable pupils at Key Stage 4 is a key priority for us. And this will also be a key focus of the Chief Officer's report, which will come to this meeting in May. We hold regular meetings with our schools to challenge predicted outcomes for learners, with a specific focus on those eligible for free school meals. Only last week I was at scheduled meetings with both Chepstow and Caldecott schools, discussing the prospects for their vulnerable learners, child by child, recognising their needs, the challenges and the interventions that those schools are putting in place. But I must emphasise, it's the schools and experienced teachers who are putting these interventions in place because they're the experts. They know their pupils best, not politicians pontificating in here. We're improving the rigour with which pupil development grant plans are assessed. All have to be submitted to the EAS, tested, checked against the Sutton Trust toolkit for impact and signed off by senior officers. We need confidence that those plans are sufficiently robust to maximise their impact on pupil outcomes. And this year, Cabinet agreed to make an additional £1,000 per head available to every Year 11 learner who is eligible for free school meals to provide additional support ahead of their examinations. And that money has been made available to the 4 secondary schools for them to spend as they see fit to provide bespoke support for their vulnerable learners. So having spoken to the schools about what that money is being spent on, a number of schools are spending that money on emotional literacy support assistance, additional parents' meetings for children eligible for free school meals and other target students, Easter revision sessions, maths support days, science revision guides. There's one school that will be providing breakfast for pupils on the morning of their examinations to ensure that they go into those exams in as strong a position as possible, and additional learning mentors. Now, the Level 2 inclusive is an artificial threshold which the Welsh Government has recognised, hence it's been rejected. We won't be publishing the Level 2 inclusive in future because it doesn't capture the wide range of achievements and it encourages gaming in the system. A disproportionate effort goes into pushing students on that C-D borderline instead of ensuring that every child achieves their full potential. As I mentioned, there are significant changes in the Welsh Government's accountability framework, and we'll be holding an all-members seminar in the coming months so that all members can be made aware of those significant changes. Because the current system is not working. It basically says that if you don't get a C, we're not interested in your achievements, which is not fair on all our pupils. And of course, what this motion doesn't recognise is how well Monmouthshire performs generally in terms of social mobility. The Social Mobility Commission, in its State of the Nation report, ranked Monmouthshire as the 3rd best local authority in the country for social mobility. And here's why. At the foundation phase, 82.9% of pupils in Monmouthshire eligible for free school meals achieved outcome 5. That's the highest of any local authority in Wales. This assesses the percentage of 7-year-olds performing at the expected level in language, literacy, communication, mathematical development, and personal and social development, well-being and cultural development. Now, I note Councillor Betruni's point about social mobility in Conservative-run councils. The only other Conservative-run council in Wales is 4th in that social mobility ranking. Monmouthshire also has the 3rd narrowest gap between free school meals and non-free school meals performance at outcome 5. The report overall concluded that in the early years, Monmouthshire delivers the best outcomes for young disadvantaged children. Monmouthshire also had one of the narrowest gaps between free school meals and non-free school meals pupils at just 10%. The equivalent figures for 2018 also show a gap of exactly 10%. Since the Social Mobility Commission report was published, the gap between free school meals and non-free school meals at Key Stage 2 has narrowed to 10.6%, with 84.8% of free school meals pupils achieving the expected level, compared to 95.4% of non-free school meals pupils. And at Key Stage 3, the attainment gap has narrowed to 27.4%. But we must recognise that more than any other local authority, our cohorts at Key Stages 3 and 4 are very different to those in primary schools. Now, in terms of social mobility and how we move forward, I believe that our proposals for Band B and a new school in Abergavenny are a unique opportunity in that town to reset the opportunities for social mobility and ensuring that no child is left behind. Now, I note the implied criticism in the motion that not enough money is going to schools. Now, the indicator-based assessment, it's a modelled amount calculated by Welsh Government that determines how much local authorities should spend on services such as education. In Monmouthshire, over the last 3 years, we've consistently spent over and above this amount. So despite being the worst funded local authority in the country, and again facing the deepest cuts of any council from the Welsh Government, which incidentally has a growing budget from the UK Treasury, we continue to prioritise funding for our school system. Now, the Labour group asked for more money to go into the system.
Chairman, the motion does not say anything about money or more money.
Right, okay.
I said
Well,
it
you
was
accepted it
implied.
from the leader. It's not implied. It doesn't say it in the motion. It doesn't talk about Mountain House. You've got to apply the same rules equally.
Okay, the motion refers to cuts as being to blame. So that's money. They asked for more money to go into the system, but I note they're not making any representations to Welsh Government to stop their cuts to the revenue support grant. I note the Labour group opposed our budget protecting schools and also opposed our proposals to increase council tax so we had more money to invest in our school system. So we recognise that free school meals outcomes, specifically at Key Stage 4, are not good enough. We're working closely with our partners in the EAS to improve them, and we'll continue to do so and to offer that challenge to our schools. But clearly, it's teachers at the coalface who are the experts in this, and we will continue to offer that challenge, but support them as best we can. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank the South Wales Argus for putting this on the agenda, but I'm disappointed that we haven't heard any suggestions from the Labour group as to where additional money might come from, or any ideas as to how that money should be spent to best support our most vulnerable pupils. So
Chairman,
I'm disappointed
Chairman,
that they've leapt on
can I
these
just
figures.
say, the motion doesn't say
I'm-
anything about cuts, talks nothing about money, it doesn't ask for anything more about money. You shut us down on Mountain House. He's talking about money, and it says nothing about money. So are you going to be fair, or are you just going to let it slide, which I assume you're going to let it slide? Okay, you let it slide.
Okay. I'm disappointed that 8 months after these results came out, we haven't heard any suggestions, any constructive proposals as to how we can best support our most vulnerable pupils in the county. We recognise these figures are not good enough, and we're working to address them. But I feel very disappointed that the Labour group have jumped on these figures like a passing bandwagon. They don't have a plan, they don't have any ideas, they don't have any proposals to support our most vulnerable pupils, and they don't even know what the qualifications are called.
Shh, calm down, calm down. Dimitri, do you wish to respond now or come in at the end? Okay. Councillor Maureen Powell then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There was just one thing that I was noticing. The figures that they're worrying about is the difference between the free school meals and the top marks in school. If you've got a very good result at the top of the school, then the difference between that and the free school meals is going to be a worse. Come on, it is going to be worse. If the top layer isn't as high and the free school meals are the same, then that's going to look better. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration as well. It's not just the free school meals themselves, it's the difference between the free school meals and the rest of the school as well.
Thank you. We should stop chipping in because everybody's going to get a chance. And I'm not. If you're all over speaking everybody else, then we lose the meaning of the debate. Councillor Blakeborough, please.
I mean, absolutely, I agree with this coming for discussion because I agree, Councillor Petruni, time and time again you bring this forward. And it's imperative because even if it is only one child that hasn't had the opportunity to reach their full potential, a red flag should be flying. But obviously I do have concerns over percentages, and if you're set in a competition in the league table, I must admit I'd rather have numbers rather than percentages because we know how it works. You could have one child and that could look like 100%. You could have one child out of 100 and that's 1%. We are also comparing to the fact that actually in Monmouthshire we have a higher level of attainment. So again, that skews the figures. So I would be really interested in the numbers. However, as I said earlier, even if it was only one child, we've got to ask the questions of EAS. Are you doing your absolute best, everything you can, to ensure this child can fulfill their potential? One child, one chance, one future. Mind you, I would broaden that more and say that the whole education system needs a review, because I do think that our examination system is crude and often cruel in terms of measuring a child's worth and in intelligence. So I would like this to go forward into that we should find different ways of giving young people opportunities and giving young people qualifications in order to go down their future pathway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sarah Jones, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm probably going to amplify a lot of the messaging that Richard's already conveyed. I understand that these results are disappointing, but what's really disappointing to me is that the motion that's been put forward to us totally ignores the positive work and the positive results of the earlier stages at foundation phase, key stage 2 and key stage 3. And it's also a real shame because Councillor Petruni is a very valued and active member of our Social Justice Advisory Group, and that's exactly the sort of platform where we should be seeing these issues raised. Whilst the focus isn't solely on education, it's an area where we deal with those wider societal challenges which all contribute to challenges with attainment. So it's a shame that this issue wasn't brought forward at an earlier stage, and particularly given how enthusiastic and passionate you are about it. I'm echoing what Richard's already said. As an administration, we remain totally committed to supporting and giving all children and young people the best possible start in life, and working with all of our young people as individuals. As has already been highlighted and been picked up on by many members, these individuals have significant and complex backgrounds, and the results themselves do not necessarily reflect those challenges. Nor do the results as they stand reflect the impact of what's known as pockets of poverty, so where we have smaller cohorts juxtaposed alongside more affluent areas, and that's outlined itself in the DFCS report, which acknowledges and highlights the double challenge for those learners. So that's a real challenge, and it's something we have to accept, but something we very much acknowledge as a council and as administration. Councillor John highlighted some of the work that's been done to address the results that have been put forward in the motion. And those are very welcome measures and ones that I'm sure will see fruition in years to come. But I'm here speaking with a social justice hat on. What are we doing to help our young people, to create the right environment for our young people to ensure outside of the education setting they're being given the very best possible start in life? So I'll just give you some of those examples to show that there is proactive and progressive action happening. We have the Early Help Panel, so that's developing an integrated early intervention and prevention pathway, supporting children and families at the earliest opportunity. We're working closely with ACEs, often connected to free school meal recipients, and understanding the link between ACEs, poverty and attainment, and also raising awareness around ACEs through our draft action plan. We're looking very closely at emotional resilience and mental health. That's a really key interest of mine. Building mental well-being for young people outside of the school setting to ensure that when they enter the school, they're in the right place mentally to start that learning journey. And just more widely around housing, we're doing a lot of work at the moment around homelessness, etc., trying to ensure, again, that housing disruption is not happening outside of the school setting, which could impact on those young people that are vulnerable and most likely to be impacted. So in conclusion, breaking the link between deprivation and attainment remains an absolute priority for us, and I continue to work with my Cabinet colleagues, with Councillor John and the other Cabinet members, to address these issues from the angle of social mobility. Over and above this target and this motion is the question of child poverty and having to eradicate the issue of child poverty altogether. That's much more of a fundamental thing we should be focusing on as a council. And sadly, that target set by Welsh Government to eradicate child poverty by 2020 is very much going to be missed. In fact, child poverty is rising right across Wales. So let's get behind that and start working solutions to be part of that problem. So I personally reject the motion, and I do so on the grounds that whilst I acknowledge the performance at free school meals cohort at level 2 was disappointing, for me the motion personally fails to acknowledge the complexities, it fails to acknowledge the individual, and it fails to acknowledge the fantastic results and positive results at the earlier stages of foundation, key stage 2 and key stage 3, which is very much acknowledgement of the work of our teachers and our officers. So I reject the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fox, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can I thank Richard and Sarah for eloquently putting the true perspective on things. And Niall, I'm pleased you're here today. I hope you can put some balance back into this debate and recognise some of the figures which were counted there. However, we do, as an administration, always acknowledge where we could do better. We know there is further work to be done. And we will never take our foot off the pedal with that. And I think Richard has given the clarity that is needed to help us all understand it. Was it easy to create a political platform here at the expense of vulnerable people? I am disappointed, actually, Dimitri, that you've taken the stance you have. It is right for you to challenge us, but it's also right for a mature opposition to recognise where there is good as well and work collectively. You are part of the Social Justice Committee. You haven't raised that sort of issue before. Indeed, actually, when you you attack the system and attack the administration, or rather the council, which is, I know, your role. You need to think deeper about what you're actually saying. What you're doing, you're criticising the many wonderful teachers we have in this authority who are working
No,
day
Chairman,
to day.
that's inaccurate.
No,
My
you
quote
are.
does not criticise the teachers.
But it's implicit in all of that you have said today. You're saying that it's terrible here. It's terrible in Monmouth. Our children are being let down.
I blamed you,
You're
actually,
saying,
not the
you're
teachers.
saying that it's implied in your motion that our young people are being let down by those practitioners who are working at the coalface
Chairman,
day
does
in,
say anything
day out.
about practitioners in the motion?
It's implicit.
Are we talking about everything that's implicit? Are we talking about everything implicit? Just so I'm aware.
Chairman, it's implicit. How many of us councillors teach the children in our schools every day? None of us. None of us. So you are attacking the very people constantly with this platforming you do. I know you have to do a little bit of political platforming. Indeed, it seems that you probably, you seem quite articulate in the drama of this. I wish you could apply that to your colleagues in the Bay. You know, again, in the last PISA results, Wales are languishing at the bottom of all the countries in the UK. It continues to do that. Your government is letting the children and young people down of this country and have done for the last 20 years. And, where's the recognition of that? I hope you speak with the volume you do in here when you're talking to your colleagues down the Bay who can actually make some of the changes that all authorities would be willing to accept to help drive forward further improvement in all service areas. However, we fund strongly our education, as Richard has shared. We've increased our commitment to education within our education system here, and as Richard has shared very well. And Mr. Chairman, I cannot support this sort of political platforming. We'll see more and more of this, and we sadly do see more and more of this. What I want is a productive relationship, the relationship that Roger asks us each year to consider working closely together. We don't ever see it. We only hear the fine words, and words are cheap.
Councillor Batruni, it's your position to... Oh, sorry, hold on. Sorry, Tony.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm appalled at what I'm hearing. Money was mentioned, so we may as well talk about money. This has started with austerity 10 years ago, as far as I'm concerned, and since then, pupil costings per pupil have gone down by £500 over that period of time. We know in a situation where the staff who work in schools, their morale is low, purely because the resources they've not got are an effect on their work. We're quite happy to pay teaching assistants 50 quid a day. We're quite happy to pay teachers 90 quid a day when we pay agencies a far bit more to do it. Now that is affecting the morale of the teachers, which is then run down onto the morale of the kids who are learning. Equally, the taxation policies in the Westminster government have not created anything better for the lesser well-off in society, where they gain from some taxation policy. For example, the latest one that's come out is that those people earning 60 grand a year or more will get maybe 500 quid a year extra, or better in their pockets, but the ones who are getting very little will get nothing. So therefore, the spiral of free school meals is going to go down and down, which is going to raise the number of free school meal pupils in the schools up. With the morale problem and the fact that you're not creating the environment for the teachers to work in, it's a vicious circle whereby we've got to get out of. It's no good blaming the Welsh government. This started 10 years ago with austerity coming down to us. No matter what you say, the Welsh government have got so much of a cake to cut open, and they've got to choose which way it goes. They could put all of it into education and nothing into health, nothing into health care for the elderly. You've got to realise, as far as I'm concerned, that this is a wider issue than just the fact is the facts that Dimitri provided are true, but it's a wider issue for society. And as far as I'm concerned, society is letting all our youngsters down, and it's no good us sitting here saying we're not. We are letting them down, and I support the motion.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor Batruni, if you'd like to wind up, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The one councillor you couldn't accuse of attacking his own party, I would say, is me, when you can relate to Newport and Sencom. So I've got a consistent record, and so does this group. This council has let off EAS again. Fine, it's up to them. I did notice the typo, but I thought I'm not going to bother changing the typo because I thought that wouldn't be the substance of the discussion. It's interesting the Cabinet member made it his main point, which says everything you need to know, even though we should be completely focused on our poorest children, our most vulnerable children. And if it makes him feel better to mock me, crack on. I got broad shoulders. But this is exactly how we got into special measures. The first time, the contribution from Councillor Sarah Jones exemplifies why we got into special measures, is that they focus on the first years. That's always been our record. That's a very consistent trend. Look at the trends. We do great in the first couple of years, and then it drops at GCSE, and that is our main problem. They stay in that delusional state. That is up to them. Great social justice. The last social justice meeting we talked about how we could sell £20 cheeses to people abroad. I don't know why that's going to do with social justice, but apparently it is. But we've talked everything, and they've said, well, what's your solution? My job is to highlight the failure. They would not do it. They did not mention once that they're the worst in Wales and that the trend is dropping. That is undeniable facts, and they can just pretend that they've got things to improve. We've heard this for 5 years. You're the worst in Wales, Councillor John. Congratulations, Peter Fox. You get another OBE for that. Being so terrible, it should be something to be proud of.
All right, let's all... Shall we all keep calm? We're all adults. We don't need to chunder at each other. Right, those in favour of Councillor Petruni's motion, please show. Make that 11. 11, I'll make it 11 too. And those against the motion, please show. The motion is lost. Is this lady going to present her own motion? Bill first. Councillor Murphy, would you like to introduce item 6, Monmouthshire Citizens Advice Bureau, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'd like to reintroduce Shirley Lightbound. She's been to see us before. I think the first time in this particular council, so perhaps not everybody knows her. Shirley is the Chief Exec of the Monmouthshire County Citizens Advice Bureau, formed out of the merger of the individual bureaus some years ago. Since the merger, the Bureau has grown in strength considerably, provides a vital service within the county, and Shirley's come along here today to outline the present position and refer to some important current issues. So over to you, Shirley.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murphy. And thank you also to Councillor Murphy for all the support you've given us as an agency over the years. It's valued. I'm here today to talk about citizens' advice, and some of you I will have spoken to before, and some of you not. You will have all received our annual report at the end of last year, and I'm not going to talk specifically to the annual report, but I am going to mention some of the new statistics that we have, fresh, hot off the press, as of the 31st of March this year. In total, we saw just over 4,000 clients in the last 12 months, and those clients brought with them, on average, 2 issues each. So there was about 8,500 issues that we were dealt with for those clients. Most of our clients are in the welfare benefits and tax credits area, but we deal across the board with just about anything that you can mention. Just as a matter of interest, we bring back into the community just over £2 million in gains through the work that we do with your clients. So I think you'll agree that for the contribution that you and the town and community councils make to our work, that we repay you more than about 10 times over, I think, in average. But anyway, most of our clients are still face-to-face, but we are expanding our digital service. About 27% of our clients now contact us through the telephone, and accumulation of about another 9% through web chat, email, and what we call chatbot. And don't ask me to explain how chatbot works, because I'm afraid I don't really get it. But fortunately, my advisors do, so I don't need to worry about that. The majority of our clients are over 45. We would like very much to be able to attract the younger people and make them aware of the services that we have available. And this is one of the reasons why we're going down the digital line, because that is seen as being a way that they may prefer to contact an agency like ourselves. One of our main issues, as I said, is welfare benefits. And as of last Monday, the 1st of April, we started delivering a new service to help claimants apply for universal credit. This funding comes actually from the DWP, from national government, and the contract was agreed by Citizens Advice nationally for England and Wales. And we in Monmouthshire have the benefit of an advisor 2 days a week. It isn't as much as we would have liked, but that's what the funding covers for us. So we have an advisor who we actually share with Torvine Citizens Advice. She works for them for the other 3 days a week, because they also had less than one person, so we combined and put it all together. As I say, she started with us last week. She spends a half day in each of our 4 main offices. That's Abergavenny, Caldecott, Chepstow and Monmouth. And she is available to be contacted through the telephone or by telephone. She has an admin support worker who will arrange appointments. And there is also a public telephone number where clients can access basic information about universal credit and then be shown through the process of applying. The funding for the project, which is called Help to Claim, only covers clients from their first application to their first payment. Any other issues that a client might have with universal credit or any other benefit issue or anything else would be dealt with by our generalist support service. We also have in each office, in the waiting rooms now of each office, a computer which is solely for the use of clients who want to make a universal credit application. These have been provided by the project and are now all in situ and available for clients to use. The client can get support in how to log on. All they can do on it is apply for universal credit. And if they have any other issues, then there will be an advisor there to support them. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that will be of benefit to the people in the area. Mm-hmm. The other project that we run at the moment is the Better Advice, Better Lives project, which is funded by Welsh Government and has been for about 16, 17 years now. Basically, it is to provide benefit support to clients who have disability and long-term health issues. We take referrals from medical practitioners, social workers, and also self-referrals by the clients, and we will help them with any help that they need for help with applications for benefit, which they are eligible for, but also things like putting them in touch with care and repair, so that they might get help with their gardening, or putting them in touch with Age Cymru so that they can get help with other issues as well. So we run that project. It is actually up for, we guaranteed funding at the moment until the 31st of December this year, and the Welsh Government are putting all their advice funding into a single advice fund, of which the Better Advice, Better Lives project will fall, and that is up for commissioning imminently. We've actually been waiting for the tender documents to come out since last December, but we've been assured that we'll have them by the end of April. So, and we will be applying for that fund as part of Citizens Advice Cymru, not as an individual agency standing alone in Monmouthshire, but we would hope to have some of the funding from that to benefit our clients. Mm-hmm. On that subject, I think I'd like to read you a case study of one of our clients who's used that service. Because I think that this tells the picture of what we do probably better than anything else. The client had recently gone through a breakup which had left her devastated, and also as a single mother of 8 children. Not only did the client have to deal with her own emotional issues following the breakup, but now she had to find the money to feed her large family and to provide for them across the board. She was in financial crisis when she came to see us, both in regard to debt and to low income, and she was suffering from depression. The client had informed the tax credits of her changes. However, her money was ridiculously low. We took some time to go through her current benefit claims through the award letters and her bank statements showing payments, and established that there was a massive underpayment, which amounted to just over £6,600. We contacted both tax credits and the child benefit over this, and after some issues, eventually managed to highlight the problems and get the money paid back to the client. She was over the moon. In addition, we also saw that the client had an issue with a tax credit overpayment notice of £8,000. Again, we took action on this, and after some explanations, managed to wipe out the debt. Finally, we secured a new weekly payment for the client of £176 per week. The client was delighted that we were able to offer immediate help and get such a fantastic result. Her stress levels melted away, and she stopped taking medication for depression. We managed in total to secure a back payment of £6,685, wipe out an £8,000 overpayment, and in addition giving her an annual increment to her income of £23,800. The client quotes, "I was in pieces, and you took the time to help. I never imagined such a fantastic result, and would have been utterly lost if it wasn't for you. Thank you to Citizens Advice." The Citizens Advice Service is 80 years old this year, and we're needed as much now as we were in the early days of the Second World War, which is when we were first set up. And what the clients that we see have much more complex problems, and we deal with these every day. Your support and the financial support that we get from you is used every day to support clients in your community. And I'm very grateful for that support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dimmock, you've indicated you'd like to say a few words.
Shirley, I would just like to thank you for coming here today. You provided, great insight to what you're doing in our communities. You clearly play a vital role, and I look forward to working with you in organising a pop-up session with MEGA and ND because I think it's required. My one request is that we receive monthly or quarterly emails, because obviously if you're seeing a spike or trends, there's going to be more residents that have got concerns relating to those issues. So I'd like to receive updates direct from Citizens Advice, so then we could share it. I'm active on social media on lots of different platforms, and I will definitely be able to target the younger demographic that you're struggling to reach at the moment, if you could. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Yes, we could certainly provide quarterly statistics and show spikes and changes in the demographics. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Jane Pratt.
Thank you, Chairman. And Shirley, I would also like to echo my colleagues' comments. I would like to thank you on behalf of the community I represent for the absolutely amazing job you and your volunteers do. And I think, sometimes people find themselves in a place where they have got absolutely nowhere to turn, and you are there for them. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you very much for that.
Councillor Peter Fox.
Just to echo those, thanks, Shirley. It's a great, fantastic service. As a councillor of 20-odd years, I've had to refer many people through to the service over those years, and it's been invaluable. I think your case study just spelt out just how much can be done. So many times people find themselves in such difficult situation and can't see the wood for the trees. And actually there can be some quite easy solutions out of some of that, which can just transform their lives overnight. And we've all seen that within our wards at times where people have found that way through. And, you know, it's so important that the CAB are there to give that advice, because whilst we can try to give a little bit of advice, we can't. We can only signpost to people like yourself. So just a big thank you for all you're doing, and all of the volunteers who are involved in offering the advice right throughout the county. A big thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Petruni.
It was just to say thank you very much for all the work you do in our communities. I know you have a Gateway Union, a credit union in Bulwark, and I know it helps many of my residents. I just wanted to ask, have you seen a spike in cases and different types of cases since 2010?
We're very aware of the fact that though we're seeing almost the same number of clients as we've been seeing over the last probably 8 or 9 years, year on year, the complexity of the issues that we're dealing with has changed quite considerably. We feel this is partly because, like some of the councillors have said, some people have nowhere else to go. And we are quite often that sort of backstop that they don't find anywhere else. But I think one of the other issues is that there is an awful lot of information now available to the public through various channels. And those clients that can access that information and interpret it and use it to help themselves are obviously going to do so. And we encourage that. We like to empower our clients to be able to act for themselves and move on. So we're finding that the clients that we are seeing and the ones that we're spending the most time with are those that aren't able to interpret that information in the appropriate way and are the most vulnerable in the communities and need the most support, and generally have quite complex issues to deal with.
Thank you very much. Phil, do you want to wind up for me? Sorry, Tony, I missed you. Just hold on. It's because you're far to the right, Tony. That's what it is.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Shirley. One thing you haven't mentioned is the fluidity of the sea. I'm an observer for Caldicot Town Council, as you're aware. You haven't mentioned the fluidity of the CAB on a day-to-day basis, that you run maybe a 9-month surplus and after that there'll be nothing. So the money is important. I would urge Monmouthshire County Council to reconsider the payment they make and probably increase it next year. And anybody who are members of community councils, go back to community councils and speak to them to say that this is a service. It's not free. It costs money to run, but it is free to the people who use it. But it needs proper support, financial support from community councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Right, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Shirley, for coming along and doing that. We saw the CAB quite some years ago now in somewhat disarray, and after a long campaign by ourselves and yourselves, it certainly did come together in a very positive way. I think the service that you're giving now is absolutely spot on. We certainly value it, and at every opportunity give you the support that we can, as you know. And of course we always give you several years ahead, so you know with your planning, and you know what funding you need to get from elsewhere. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again.
And can I add my thanks from the Chair as well for a very well presented afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
We go on to item 7, the very subject we're all desperate to hear about. Brexit preparedness. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, it comes to us all. This report is, as you can see, to provide an information-only update for members regarding the Council's preparedness for Brexit. And in preparing for it, Brexit worker group was made up of officers from key service areas has been established which is now meeting fortnightly and led by Francis Williams, Chief Officer for Enterprise. As I said, this is an officer-only working group, and the leader and I have been identified to front up any political aspects that occur. It has been raised that only a select number of members have been party to the preparations. That is not the case. By way of this update, all members are being updated on the situation as far as it is currently understood. Francis Williams is here to answer any questions that members might have. However, Mr. Chairman, might I suggest that we should avoid a debate on this, as we are unlikely to progress, judging by the efforts in Westminster. So I suggest this the report and subsequent actions go to a round of the scrutiny committees, where members can have the opportunity of examining all the particular aspects of it properly.
Thank you, Phil. You're all happy with that suggestion? I don't think we'd really do any good here this afternoon on that. On that point, then you've got your way, Phil, and we go on to item 8. Sorry, Joe.
Sorry, I didn't put my hand up quite quickly enough. I just have to raise a certain aspect of concern. I appreciate that it is primarily officers who've been dealing with the project, but it has actually highlighted the fact that there has been a political input, and that political input has only come from the Conservative group. If this is the case, then I would have to say, please, we are having a great deal of trouble in Westminster at the moment, in which now is the only time that it has reached out across the House to include the opposition. And so I would say that those of us who are in opposition in this council as well ought to have our voices and the input of our residents' concerns brought forward to the group.
Our Chief Executive will lead you at this stage.
I certainly won't lead you. I'll provide you with a perspective which may offer the council a balanced perspective. This has been an agenda which has been almost entirely in the officer domain. It's technical. I'd offer you the view that there are probably enough politicians around Europe and the rest of the world enjoying themselves in this sort of space. And the activity that this council has been conducting has largely been risk-based assessment, responding to other officials in other places. So whilst the leader and Councillor Murphy, I guess, are designated political leads, I think it would be fair to say, gentlemen, that broadly speaking, this has been work that you've been content to leave to officers where to this point in time, I think it's belonged. I personally don't see any value at this point in time in the council putting together a political working group. I'm not sure what we would say to you. I'm not sure the activity that we would achieve together, but I do know that it would carry an expense called an overhead. So as this thing develops, if I sense there is a need and there is a value, of course, I would reach out and suggest that there is a need for cross-party work, but very genuinely, I don't feel that at this point in time.
Thank you, Paul. Having heard that, Deb, do you still want to speak, or are you accepting what has been said? Hold on, let me go first. Deborah?
I guess I'm unsure of the point of this coming to us if we can't debate it and ask questions about it, really. I mean, personally, the Brexit travesty has left me exhausted and in despair, really. And now we've been found out that we've got an extension to October the 31st, and obviously it's very fitting that somebody today on the radio described this period as a period of a nightmare before Brexit, which is one of the many Halloween references that were made. I guess going on from Joe, it goes without saying that as an independent, I would urgently support a cross-party team approach to this. We have information, but we haven't been able to contribute in any way. The report does highlight some of the risks, but there's no detail there. There's no meat to the bones, really. And it's good that we are trying to look ahead. I think also we've got to be aware of the bigger picture. So this is being prepared for a no-deal Brexit, but obviously there are consequences and impact for Monmouthshire residents, whether it's a no-deal, a May's deal, a customs union, or another referendum. And this is personal, I'm not representing the independent group here, but I have an idealistic hope that we just might stay in the EU. But yeah, I think I'm dreaming on there. Ultimately, for many years, we don't know what Brexit looks like. So in terms of having this paper, I do feel as if we've been sent into the darkness with a candle, but no match to light it. So it's just so unknown. And so when I'm looking at this, I have questions like I would like more detail on the risk and therefore the consequences that's been highlighted. What are we looking at to stockpile? I don't know what at risk and how much that's going to cost. How much will Brexit preparedness cost us? And that's staff time as well, which is really a valuable resource. And I know we do get a bit of money, but I'd like to know what the bill is and how much that's going to be. And then obviously, will we have an MAP elections? Will they go ahead? And how is that affecting us? So for me, that report, there's a lot of unanswered questions there.
Sorry, Councillor Blake, but I certainly wasn't looking to stifle debate on this report. I was sort of speaking directly to Councillor Watkins' point about potentially forming a political group or a cross-party group. If you want to do that, absolutely fine. We will service it. I just sort of go back and suggest to you, really think hard about the value and the cost of that right now. In terms of some of your specifics, what are we stockpiling? Absolutely nothing. You know, we're not in that game. You know, I think there are times when we've got to just recognise that we're a very small part of these islands. And your analogy of travelling without a candle, if it gives you any confidence, you're not on your own. And I would just sort of ponder what's best left at national, regional, and local level. Largely, this is still a national agenda. It's relevant to tell you that at 1:59 today, we've had an email from Welsh Government standing down arrangements that have been put in place for steady state monitoring. That's in some ways very good news for us because it's been quite officer intensive. But actually what it's been generating in terms of value, I think is very questionable. I'll give you a commitment that will involve you when we've got something to involve you with, but my personal view is we're better off doing it via all member seminars so that those of you that are interested, we can share fully and openly. They're easier to arrange, they're quicker to service, they're less costly, and for those of you that are interested, we can guarantee you all access to information at the same time. So my intention, Councillor Watkins, wasn't to shut anybody out. I think if we go, when we have something meaningful to say, it seems to me to be the sort of issue that probably all councillors would want to hear, rather than just two or three. And that's certainly what we've tried to do on the last, I think we've had 2 seminars on this issue. We had the WLGA here, and we had one other specific one. And that sort of approach seemed to me to be generally well received. I'm happy to, you know, to put in place anything that members want, but that would be where I'm at with it right now.
Councillor Fox.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I can just echo what Paul said. I can be very clear. There is not an elected member working group in this council looking at this. We took a stance that we felt it's important for all members to be appraised of things at the same time. Hence today, hence the WLJ seminar, hence any future debates. What Phil was suggesting, though, is because there is probably a desire in some of you to ask those more detailed questions about some of the areas relating to different parts of the council, and it would seem appropriate that if it went round through the select procedure, so anything to do with young people, social care, strong communities, could satisfy themselves that the arrangements we put in place for preparedness are adequate. And that's what we were suggesting here. As for information, you know, we're not keeping anything from anybody. I am part of a political working group within the WLJ, which meets with all political leaders, and we obviously are working together within that forum. But here we believe that all members should be appraised at the same time.
Councillor Matruni.
I don't think the suggestion by Councillor Watkins should be easily dismissed. Other councils have taken this move. It's not uncommon. I think it's a very wise approach to have that clear line of political communication, because obviously in the debate is politics, but having that clear line of communication amongst leaders in a local setting is very wise. And I noticed that in other issues of crisis when this council has faced it, so when the council went to special measures, we set up a bespoke group, it was political leaders dealing with it, with building the 21st century schools, we've had a special group, all political representation on it, because it was viewed like there was a clear line of communication amongst the political leaders at a local level. With Brexit, it's not taken that view. And just it's important to do this, because if you look at 6.1, the reasons, top risks for the council include a potential rise in social conflict and hostility, social cohesion. We cannot ignore that, and we're all politicians, we have different perspectives, but having us in the same room talking about these issues as they come up in our various political groups, and having clear lines of communication with leaders, I think is a beneficial thing that Councillor Watkins talks about. And workforce retention, the effect on agriculture sector, rural economy. I mean, look at the risks there, and to not have a clear line of communication amongst political leaders when other councils have done it. So, make it technical, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I need to respond to that. I don't know why the Leader of the Opposition is wanting to stifle debate and keeping it within a small select group of leaders. We want the whole of the council to be involved with a preparedness and understand where we are with preparedness. We're suggesting that every member then can get involved in a deeper way within the select process. Too often there are briefings amongst leader groups where those leaders do not take the information back to their said groups and feed it through, and we get a mismatch. We've seen that very recently with your own group on some things. So I think this stance of actually doing it as a total council together is the right and proper way forward.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there, because otherwise, for those who sorry.
There was one point that Councillor Blakeborough asked that I missed. We are preparing for an EU election. You know, you should assume there will be a poll, and we're in full preparation for that now.
Penny, do you want to add to this?
Points have been raised. Paul mentioned something that I was going to mention, just a point of interest. But sorry, Chair. I would just like to say that the WLGA are doing a lot of work behind the scenes with the chief officers, and you know, we had a meeting. For instance, the social services have Brexit meetings, and you know, it's all kind of everybody's on a level playing field, because it's with all the chief officers throughout Wales in different areas, and there really are there are no major problems. But I do support seminars, members' seminars, so that members can have feedback from these officers. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, basically we're here to receive this report. For all those in favour of the report, please show. Oh, goodness gracious. Anybody against? No, okay. We now go on to item 8.1, the proposed development company of initial appraisement. Phil Murphy, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'll outline some of the points on the commercial aspects of this report and the proposals therein, and Sarah will deal with the housing aspects. So the purpose of the report is to consider the outcome of the initial appraisal into the feasibility and the need of the council to set up its own trading company to undertake residential and commercial developments. And the recommendations are to improve the findings of that initial appraisal and agree the undertaking of a detailed business case to establish the proposed trading structure, financial viability and social outcomes associated with it. Council instructed officers to undertake that appraisal of the feasibility of the creation of a residential development company to tackle a concern around the lack of market and affordable and rental affordable housing. In the intervening period, officers have undertaken research on and met with senior officers and advisors with comparable trading entities to establish the lessons learned, legal frameworks, financial considerations, and assess the evidence of demand. However, there are other opportunities that may occur, such as constructions of lettable properties, such as hotels, commercial units for rent, etc., that can also be dealt with the proposed company, much easier than going through the regulations that would only apply if the authority did it, such as through OJU or things like that. Clearly, we would have to enter into joint ventures on any projects that required expertise that we didn't have, but it certainly would give us a lot of opportunities that currently are denied to us. What we are looking for is to go on to the next stage of this creation of this development company. So the key points to bring to bear, particularly with regards to the commercial aspect of it, is the report today honours the commitment made to the Council to scope out the framework for that new venture, and that will provide us with greater flexibility to intervene in the marketplace to advance Council priorities. The outline today positions a development company that will be wholly owned by the Council, which is more than a housing company, to give us maximum scope. Our goal is to align commercial disciplines with socially and ethically responsible practices so that we can optimise our role in shaping the county. If Council approves this report today, we will commence the next stage of shaping up the legals, financials, governance, etc., to bring the company to life. This can be done by September 19. This proposition is in sympathy with our approach of being an investing council, which has been demonstrated by a highly successful acquisition and build approach over the last couple of years. I'm thinking in terms of the livestock market, solar farm, Castlegate, Newport Leisure Park, etc. And not to be forgotten, the work we did to secure the world's largest compound semiconductor foundry for the wider region when we were working within City Deal to achieve that. So this proposition was galvanised by a debate on housing provision, and Sarah is now going to talk a bit more about the structure that looks like.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Jones, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Phil. Today's report is a really important part of a journey in becoming more active players in the local housing market, and that's helping to address the challenges that all of us here are very cognizant of, challenges that were presented as part of our local housing market assessment to Cabinet just a couple of months ago. And I think all of us here right across the political divide know that we have to be open to significant housing development. I think possibly that message came across in today's seminar, and it's certainly born from the challenges that we face and we're all aware of. But that development has to be good development, and it has to meet the objectives and aspirations of our council. So we have, through this report and through the potential proposals that will go forward, the capability to shape the market here and the competence to do so. And whilst acknowledging that the typical volume building approaches that suit others may not necessarily be right for us as a county. So through the proposals that we have today contained in the report, I think there are a number of goals that we should be aspiring towards and what should be fundamental to the housing element, at the very least, of the report. So we should be aiming to build homes and communities, not housing units, and to encourage the re-emergence of local SME supply chains, direct jobs and apprenticeships back into the local economy to drive delivery of this. We should be aiming for carbon positive developments, which we have a stake in over time. We should be attacking the issues through the potential that we have here, such as energy poverty and active travel through design and long-term commitment to our place. And we should understand that infrastructure and home building are related, and our aspirations should be about new standards that are very much sympathetic developments in the locality. So I think it's very important to point out that under these proposals, this is not about setting us up in competition with our partner RSLs. There's very much room and space for both of us to help support and meet the future needs of our county. So today's paper starts that ball rolling in terms of taking those next steps forward. It's a bold step, but I think it's one that a forward-thinking and brave council such as ours will be willing to take. And I hope every councillor here will get behind the report and join with me in making that commitment to our local people, whether that be young, old, or even the future generations, to ensure that they can live here and they're able to, not for fear of being priced out of the market. So, as Phil has highlighted, the recommendation here, and thanks to Deb and the team for all the work you've got to us in getting us to this place, is to approve the findings of the initial appraisal and to agree to the undertaking of a detailed business case.
Thank you. Councillor Petruni?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, we finally got the report. It took a year since the original motion, but we're here. So I welcome that that it's finally in front of us, but I'm disappointed in what I see. And I've got a lot of points, but I don't want to... Well, yeah, I'll bore everyone. So it's just confused on housing, which is a disappointment. Confused on social justice, which is another disappointment. Let me go through some specifics. First, on 3.1, it says we've asked various other bodies and experts about how they've set it up. Can it be more explicit? Or I don't mind if you want to email me rather than tell me here. Who have we asked? When do we ask them? I want to kind of list the names of who we asked. It just says we've asked. And I just want to have a clear understanding of that in my mind. On 4.8, we talk about OJU. And it is a bit onerous, but it's there for quality of process. And sure, we want quality of process. And as someone who's in the business told me, better to do it right than to do it quickly. And I completely agree. I'm just wondering your views on that, on OJU. Our main concern is about the housing. So it's lumping commercial development with housing, which I've always been queasy about, because it's just those two are in themselves massive things that I don't see how one company can do both successfully and to the best of its ability. And particularly when the original motion I put down was focusing on housing. We've already seen that commercial assets seem to be dominating that, at least on the borrowing side, and eating up any housing, any monies that we could then throw at residential housing into truly alleviate the housing crisis we have. So the document puts on, well, so it says in the document sort of equal weighting, but actually in practice it's already on the commercial, well advanced, something I'm fully behind, but that's going to eat into the money and the time we need to work on the kind of residential side. So I want a kind of any reassurance on that. It talks about affordable housing, the statistics, talks about social justice agenda, and then says we're not going to develop social housing. Okay, and then we're just going to focus on intermediate and commercial. Then we're going to make hardly any impact, because that is where the pressure point is. It's social housing. And we don't have to compete with RSLs. We could do the joint venture vehicles where we get the RSLs on board who already have the expertise to deliver in that area, and we can develop the commercial side. So as the report stands, we are going to make zero impact on the social justice agenda. Nothing. Because we're not going to do social housing. Explicitly says that in the report. So how are we going to affect affordability? Intermediate will touch around the sides. It's not going to truly tackle what we were aiming, well, when I put the original motion down, admittedly it's changed, what we were aiming to do. And that really deeply concerns me. And if you can reassure me that this will revolutionise the social justice agenda, which it doesn't in this current paper, then we're going to have to abstain, because we're not against the direction, the thrust. Hell, I'm behind it in most of the areas. But where we really want it to tackle the social justice agenda, it completely fails. It doesn't tackle what we need. And I'm afraid that on that basis, we're going to have to abstain. And I've got lots of other points, but I'm not going to bother talking.
Good afternoon. I will try and address most of the points. If I've missed any, if you just remind me, I will happily send you a list of who we've met. In terms of who we've met, I think I've listed in the report that we've actually gone out and met with Carmarthenshire model. I've made contact with Bristol City Council around their model. I've met with advisors who assisted other companies in terms of their setup, and we've also attended a Westminster briefing around housing companies. So we've met quite a few people in terms of what we've done, so we've done some due diligence around that. In terms of social justice, if you look at it a very narrow aspect of actually delivering rented social homes, then I can understand the point that you've come to, but we look at social justice in that widest context. So we talk around fuel poverty, we talk around employment opportunities, and I do actually think we can tackle some of the elements around social housing through this development company. What we've actually said is we don't want to compete with our RSLs. And we don't want to compete with RSLs because they are geared up to do it. But what the report also mentions is the fact that we can enter into joint ventures. And we actually talk about the RSLs in joint ventures throughout that report. We talk about intermediate housing, we talk about market housing, because it's not just about people who want socially rented housing, it's also about those people that want to live and work in Monmouthshire, but they can't afford to stay here. We've talked about the fact that we need to do a demand analysis to understand what is the nature of the housing that we need in this area, how does it need to be provided, so we'll look at that in terms of, are we talking about 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, what is it that people actually need, and we can look at how we can offset that. Through this development company as well, what we have a problem with is some of our sites is that they don't meet even the LDP requirements in terms of affordable housing that are provided on sites. We can exceed that. Through this development company, we can go way beyond what we've actually said. No, that's not what we've said is we're not going to compete with our RSLs who already provide social housing. If we want to allocate a site or develop out a site that's got 50 or 70% social housing, we can actually do that. In terms of a very narrow rule into roads of social rented housing, we do not want to compete with RSLs. That doesn't prevent us from partnering and doing elements around affordable housing. But what we are clearly not going to do is compete with our RSLs. They are geared up to do it. They have the expertise and the capacity to do it. We can look at it in a much more broader sense. And I think that's what the purpose of this report is around. It's around tackling much wider issues than I've said around social rented. We need to look at fuel. We need to also future-proof our communities because things around energy, low carbon, making sure they're geared up for electric vehicles, putting broadband in straight away when we're actually constructing those houses, all of those help our communities. The work that we've been doing with Mellin around Crick Road is really important, our first steps forward, because what we've actually tried to do there is develop a community. We've looked at the locality, we've looked at design standards. A view has been taken on the level of design because we've gone better than we would normally expect, because a view could be taken on the developer's profit. We could do that through this development company, and it affords us to align our development company with the policies of the council. Wider policies alongside your Economies of the Future report. So if we identify that we want to actually target and encourage people to come into our communities that will help us develop technologies and industries within this locality, or indeed deal with a shortage in a specific area around care workers, etc., we can align our policies in the development company so that we can develop potentially affordable housing in terms of rented housing below market rented. So I think if you take a very narrow view, I can understand why you draw those conclusions. If you look at the broader offer that this development company can derive, then I think it holds huge opportunities.
Thank you, Deb. Councillor Jez Becker, please.
Thank you, Chair. I find full council exhausting sometimes. It's always about what people aren't doing and what things aren't, and nobody seems to come with suggestions. And I'd like to give a suggestion and a challenge to us over our potential development company. I do agree there is a schism between the commercial and the residential. I'm going to speak mostly to the residential element of what we're about to do. It's possible that one vehicle for residential isn't enough. There are many different models that we could follow, including community interest companies, where the profit from anything stays within that community. You've heard me talk before about community land trusts, where if you build a home and you say that home is £100,000 instead of £300,000 because you have set that, then it is locked in perpetuity, asset locked, to be sold at a similar value further on in its life. So those homes become permanently affordable homes. Not social affordable homes, but permanently affordable homes for the communities who buy into those community land trusts. Now, there are 350 of those in England and Wales at the moment. The sector has grown sixfold in the last 6 years. It's something that we could be leading the way on. Okay? when you look at the opportunities that setting up structures like that would afford us, it opens us up to extra streams of funding from green housing funding companies. It opens us up to partnerships with people like LNG Modular Housing, who I took some of our officers to go and visit them. They're huge. They will only trade with people who are intending to rebalance the housing market. So we would have access to a product that other people don't have access to by virtue of it being a community land trust or a community interest company. Even this morning, Goldman Sachs sunk £75 million into another modular developer in Derby. You know, we would have access to these sorts of capabilities. We can do something different and still promote the apprenticeships, still promote the community well-being that we're intending to do with this vehicle. So I would say that what we need to do is actually have a more innovative mix of CLT, CIC, what we're intending with now, maybe some build to rent. I took some of the members and officers up to Wembley to see the 7,000 homes that Quintain are building there. And when they build them, the good aspect, I don't really believe in build to rent so much because I don't like the idea of an ultimate landlord a lot. But when they build them, because they're building them to rent, they are much more invested in the infrastructure that they build, the lifetime cycle of the building. It isn't built for 10 years, it's built for 50 years. It's built to have the proper kind of carbon neutral settings and free broadband. You know? So there are elements that we could be doing which are more than what we've got in this plan. And I think that's what we need to do. And so really, my challenge is that we should do more. And I think the question you have to ask yourself of why you wouldn't is because who are you house building for? Are you house building for profit or are you house building for people? So.
Councillor Eason, please.
Thank you, Chair. I support everything that's been said, particularly around 4.5, where in Monmouthshire it says quite clearly that the RSLs are okay for the existing builds. But if we look at Monmouthshire, particularly with the Housing Association in Monmouthshire, there's been a lot of refurbishing of properties, bringing properties up to standards so that they can be lived in for a long period of time. And in my ward in particular, they spent about 10-12 million pounds, but it's not increasing the number of properties. It's increasing the value of the area in the district. It's refurbishing flats, it's putting up new ones. So I don't think that that the policy of going to look at residential properties for not for rent or for social use would be in conflict with the registered social landlords. I think it could be done in tandem with them. For example, if this body that we're setting up under your auspices could quite readily, as far as I'm concerned, provide the financial clout to build what we do need in the south. I believe there's 900 people want houses in the south. No registered social landlord is able to build 900 properties, but you've got the ability to go part way towards that. So I believe that whilst we don't tread on the toes of registered social landlords, the mouthful to get out, registered social landlords, I think we should work in tandem with them and not just say we can't do it because they're there.
Thank you. Councillor Louise Brown, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think we do have to look at the business case, and I'd appreciate doing that. And I understand that Councillor Becker has got a number of ideas. I did go along to the Wembley day, and basically it was 17 floor tower blocks. It was an absolute concrete jungle. And I think even with modular housing, you've got to be careful, because one of the things that our planning committee did look at when we were building an estate in a particular area in Monmouthshire was to make sure that the quality of the design for the affordable housing was up to a similar sort of standard to the quality of the design for non-affordable housing, so they don't actually stand out. And I think those sort of things need to be taken into consideration when you're actually, and in terms of affordable housing, in the Wembley situation, we went along there and the rent was about two to 2,500 per month, and they had to have an income of about 3 times that, and this was affordable in London. And obviously there was no infrastructure concerns because there was Wembley Park nearby. So I think we're talking about a different ball game in this area, and I think we've got to be careful. But I do agree with Councillor Becker that we do need to look at different factors. And when we're looking at the business case, I think it's important that we also look on the risks and the costs of development as well, because you know, having seen the Water Board in relation to a particular issue I've got in my ward, I did find out that, for example, in relation to major developments, if there isn't capacity in the sewage pipes, then the developer is responsible for that particular cost. So we've got to make sure that all the costs are taken account of, and I'm sure that we'll do so. But I think that's another issue, because obviously in Monmouth they've got an issue of the lack of capacity in the sewage pipes, and the Water Board is quite important in relation to what infrastructure can be provided for new projects. So I think we've got to be cautious in terms of looking at the pros and cons of the business case and working out all the costs involved, because obviously we do have a financial responsibility as a council to make sure that we're a good steward of the funds that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Becker, do you wish to respond, or you?
No, only briefly. I was just going to say I wasn't suggesting we build 7,000 tower blocks anywhere in Monmouthshire. It's about learning from the bits that they do right, like their investment in shared workspaces and in communal areas, and in taking into account the elements of the community that they were building for, rather than building for what they thought. So it was more down to that, but I'm sure Louise knew that. So
Quickly, Louise.
Yeah. I do agree with Councillor Becker in the sense that obviously there are positive aspects of all developments, and I thought it was very interesting the community space they did at the bottom, you know, for sharing spaces for people who were in the blocks in terms of socialising. They also had a communal kitchen that could be hired out, and a communal area for sitting and mixing, and I think the social side of development often gets neglected.
Councillor Feakins.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move and to go along with the recommendations. I find it obtuse that the Labour group are going to sit on their hands and not fall in favour with this. We have looked at affordable housing. We need affordable housing for this county. This is a vehicle which can help deliver affordable housing. This proposal before us today isn't the default proposal. All this motion before us today is looking at, and I'm going to read it, to prove the findings of the initial appraisal and agree to the undertakings of a detailed business case to establish the proposed trade and structure, financial viability and social outcomes. This isn't the default business case. This is simply setting the wheels in motion for us to look at the direction of travel for this county to go along. The next steps, I'm guessing, will be through select committees and will be back through discussion in this chamber. This isn't the default case. I think that if the Labour group was to sit on their hands at this probably one of the most important times that this council's going to consider, the possibility of delivering affordable housing for our residents, I think it's obtuse. And I move the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Debbie Braitmer, please.
Thanks. Just as a comeback there, I think Councillor Petruni is just highlighting some worries he has, that it seems to be...
He's sitting on his hands.
He seems to be leaning... that the report is leaning to one side rather than the other. But if we read the report, it does say, and I will hold the council to this, it does say that one of the key issues, and the reason why we're putting this together, is that we have a projected shortfall in affordable housing in the future. And now I'm holding to that because that's one of the reasons why they're putting this together. Because when we look over the horizon, we've talked about this earlier, that there will be a drought in affordable housing. I will vote for this to go through, but I'll be watching extremely closely as to where that business plan is going. Some questions I had in my head, I guess, in terms of learning from our past experience. So because I know Monmouthshire, before my time, Monmouthshire Housing Association was originally owned by the authority. And I'm just wondering, why did we hand that? Because it did belong to us, and then we handed that over, is my understanding of Monmouthshire Housing Association.
Sorry to interrupt. Do I need to leave the room when we talk about Monmouthshire Housing?
No.
I thought it was under...
Yeah. Deb.
All right.
Mrs. Blake,
It may be that I've got this wrong.
You
Yeah,
have
yeah.
indeed.
That's
Yeah.
fine. Because my question really was, you know, why was that handed over and what's changed now? But in terms of this, the reason why I'm supporting this is because we need something desperately to address the housing shortage for the future, given that 302k is the average price and nobody can afford that. But yes, Councillor Petrucci, I think you're right to raise it, and that we keep a very close eye on this, that it doesn't go one way rather than the other. Definitely.
I was just going to say, but just for the benefit of those members that have been members probably for less than 15 years, which is quite a lot of you, we never owned Monmouthshire Housing Association. We used to hold housing stock. It was transferred almost exclusively because of the way that the finances of local government worked. We could not access funding to repair and maintain that stock. By transferring it, Monmouthshire Housing, when established, was able to access funding that we weren't. So, you know, there were other bits and pieces, but that was the guts of it. As I've got your attention, can I just make the point that we are a zillion miles away from talking about business cases? This report today is not about designing housing schemes. I think this report today is about trying to create the most liberating framework that we can to enable the sorts of ideas that Councillor Becker has talked to come forward. So we're looking for a vehicle which enables us to consider basically anything that's on the market today, or maybe on the market tomorrow, that can advance priorities of this council. So maybe we could, I think we could probably tune some of the wording. I think that sort of stuck with you, Councillor Petrucci. I think the goal really is to work in a complementary way with existing RSLs. You know, I think really what we're not interested in getting to the arena of is competing with them for land so that we're driving up profit for a third party and things of that nature. But I think, as Councillor Feekins has said, this is the piece to be worked through now, between now and September. But we are looking for a liberated vehicle that enables us to do any number of things which give you the ability to sensibly advance the agenda that you want to see happen. That's the point that we're at.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Feekins, David, do you want to add to this, or are you seconding Councillor Feekins' motion?
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Feekins was right on the button. I second the motion to move it.
Nobody else has indicated they want to speak. Yeah, I'm winding up. All those in favour of the motion on page 11, please, at the top. Do you want to wind up, Phil? Okay, come on.
Just quickly, Chair, I know Sarah wants to add. I just like to add just a little bit more clarity to this. This vehicle, when it's fully developed, would give us far more influence in the market that we've currently got just through the planning system. We can develop with joint venture partners to influence the Section 106 benefits that currently we're not getting, or certainly not in the way we'd want. We are faced with viability scaremongering that inevitably results in us having to compromise on Section 106 contributions. So by developing sites ourselves with joint venture partners, we can influence the market and also control the amount of profit that's made out of those things and use that for the public good. So this will give us considerably more flexibility in tackling the problems that we currently have, particularly around the provision of affordable housing. But I know Sarah wants to add to that.
Sarah?
I think Phil's pretty much covered it. This is about building communities, about aligning the Articles of Association that will come forward with our policy objectives. And it's much wider. It's tackling social issues as well as obviously the issue of affordable housing need. I've noted everything that each of the contributors has said as part of this because there were some really helpful points. Jez, exactly, being proactive, forward-thinking. Louis, some of the talk around the social side of development often getting overlooked. I think that's really important to know, and around sympathetic design as well. So all of that will go forward. But as everyone has said, as Matt has said, this is not a default proposal. This is the financial case that we're going to be looking at going forward. So I urge members to support this and look forward to seeing the next step as this comes forward.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour of the motion? Oh, then everybody. It's carried. We go on to Mon Life now on page 33. Peter Box, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm presenting this on behalf of Bob, who may be watching in, as he's been obviously the portfolio lead on this over some considerable time. And those of us, or those of you who will remember the history of where we've been on this, you know that at some point we were going to come to this stage at a meeting to discuss if we feel we should go forward with the ADM or if we should retain our services in-house. And you'll see the purpose of the report today is to advise the Council that the preferred model for ongoing delivery of tourism, culture, leisure and youth services is an in-house model with commitment to a fundamental programme of renewal and transformation. In March 17, we agreed to progress both an alternative delivery model, the ADM as it was known, and the Transform in-house model, just to determine the best approach for services for us to consider in due course, and here we are. And in January 18, Cabinet approved the full business case, a business plan and an associated reports to inform the establishment of the new entity. Cabinet also agreed to receive a fully developed initial 5-year management agreement, inclusive of a complete evaluation matrix and a detailed governance framework. Again, to be considered by this Council prior to any enactment. And in June 18, we approved the process stages required ahead of a final decision to enact the Mon Life company, and that included recruitment of a shadow company board, and obviously those shadow structures were to remain internal advisory bodies until such times the final council would be taken, a decision would be taken by this council. And then in July 18, the council approved the proposed governance arrangements for the Mon Life group of companies. And whilst council officers have been assessing the case for change for many months, in January 19, the council appointed legal advisors to provide an analysis of the legal implications for MCC of the future provision. And the risk analysis was also analysis proposed commercial opportunities contained within the business case with respect to the potential implications for the council. In tandem to the above, the council officers undertook a detailed financial analysis of the business benefits of moving to the services to the ADM model. And some of that criteria is laid out in 3.8 and gives a flavour, members a flavour. I know you would have worked through that, so I'm not going to plough through it myself. And we see further then in 4 on the options appraisal, the models, the advantages of AGM against the Transform in-house model and vice versa. And you can pick out the issues there. I suppose the conclusions then are drawn from the various assessment activities undertaken, are captured well in 5. You know, the financial case to move to an ADM offers only marginal benefits to the council and is heavily reliant on NNDR savings. And as part of a wider taxation reform agenda, there is an increasing level of risk that this favourable taxation treatment for leisure trusts is is removed, the gain is not substantial enough then to justify the energy that we would need to be invested to realise it. And the proposals within the business plan for income generation and growth can largely be developed whilst within the council. We don't need to go to an AGM to realise that those changes. And also there are some recent changes you'll see there in C in reasons about the VAT and how that is looked at going forward. So some significant changes have happened over the last few years, and I think changes within this organisation of how we're doing things and driving things forward. Bob was very, very supportive of this report today, but very, very supportive also of the need for that commitment to a fundamental programme of renewal and transformation within those services. So it shouldn't be same old if in-house. It's actually how do we do things different, like we're doing in Monmouth. So the recommendations there, Mr. Chairman, I won't read all through them now. It's up to you if you want me to afterward in winding up. But I would add an additional recommendation at 2.7, and that's really that we, this council, should write to the Wales Government asking that they exempt all council-owned leisure centres from NNDR to level that playing field, which is unlevel at the moment, with other ADMs and that acquire charitable trust status, and then consequently become exempt from NDR. Why can't we, why can't it be good for the whole of Wales if we could change the way that these areas are looked at so they can actually progressively move forward and we can offer the quality of service we want to see going forward as well. So I thank staff, and there's been a huge amount of work to get to this point, and there will be a lot of people who are disappointed from the recommendations and some people perhaps relieved of the recommendations. It was important that we spent time to understand this, because what's deep in our heart is a desire to make sure that these services thrive and and become the best they can be going forward. The ADM was at the time was a thought that may be able to do that better than we could do it ourselves in-house, and I think we've realised now that perhaps isn't the case. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move the recommendations as outlined from 2.1 through to 2.6, so with the addition of that one on NNDR at 2.7. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is it
Seconded? And can we move all recommendations on block, please, Chair?
Oh, bloody hell. I faint on my last council meeting. Right, does anybody want to add to that? We've got a recommendation and a seconder from Councillor Dimitri. Okay, including the 7th item as well. All those in favour, please show. There you are, that's everybody. Well done, everybody. Thank you very much, Dimitri. Right, where am I going next, folks? Yeah, page 107, isn't it? Yeah, the next item is the confirmation of the minutes of the finance meeting held here a month ago on page 101.
Move.
And so it's seconded. Thank you, Philip. Anybody wish to question it? No. Do you want to take a vote on it? All those in favour? Thank you. We go on to page 107. That's the Democratic Services meeting held on the 3rd of December, page 107.
Yes,
David?
Chair. Can I ask the Council to accept the 2 lots of minutes, please?
Yeah, well done, David. And is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Higginson. All those in favour, please show. And then the minutes of the Audit Committee on the 31st of January. Councillor Higginson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Now you just ask the Council to accept these minutes as they are.
Thank you very much. All in favour, please show. That's excellent. Anything else? That brings us to 4:30. Just 2 hours. So thank you all very much indeed. Have a good day. Drive safely home.
Please be upstanding as the Chairman leaves the chamber.